Hello, welcome to The Moment. This time I have two stories for you. The first is about £10 million worth of redevelopments that are set to get underway in Newcastle city centre. And the other story is about the reintroduction of the Lynx after over 1,000 years and what that might mean for Britain. But before that, I have a quick update on Rothbury Hospital. A while ago, I ran a story about a campaign called Save Rothbury Community Hospital, the aim of which is to get the 12 inpatient beds reopened after they'd been closed by the Northumberland Clinical Commissioning Group, or CCG, in September last year. The CCG had closed the beds due to patients tending to receive care at home, and they had said that the beds were underused, and that was their reasoning for closing the beds. The citizens group Save Rothbury Community Hospital believed that the closure was merely a cost-cutting exercise. But if you want to hear more about the background of this, including an interview with SRCH member David Blakeburn, check out The Moment Ep13. Now, a couple of weeks ago, the Northumberland Gazette released an article about developments to the building itself, and that reads, quote, "Rothbury's GP practice is set to move into the hospital as the community awaits a final decision on the future of the facility's 12 inpatient beds." It then goes on to say, quote, "For its part, Northumbria Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust has underlined that the proposed move predates and is not linked to the provision of inpatient services." Now, this was something that I believe David Blakeburn spoke about in our interview, but I did contact him recently to see if the SRCH had heard anything themselves. And David responded with a statement saying, quote, "It has long been planned that the GP practice was to move into the ground floor of the community hospital, even before the decision to close the beds on the ward. The practice will be moving in before the end of the year. This move has nothing to do with the 12-bed ward on the first floor, but understandably some people have conflated these events. The decision on the beds will be formally announced by the CCG in October this year, with publications being issued in advance. SRCH continues to work on its campaign to save the beds, but it looks increasingly like the CCG will decide on permanent closure. This would not be the end of the campaign, however, as we have other approaches available to us to continue, such as a judicial review." So that's the situation as it currently stands, so I will definitely be returning to this story once the CCG has officially made its decision in October. I also have an update on the Humford Dam story from last episode. It seems Wansbeck MP Ian Lavery has written to the Environment Agency to express the concerns of the people. He writes, quote, "Humford Dam is a much-loved spot on the river, frequented by not only people living locally, but by those visiting the area. The removal of this feature would undoubtedly negatively impact on the visual appeal of the area. Local people are concerned at the claims that this will actually improve the visual impact of the site, and having recently visited the Bothell Mill Weir that was removed a couple of years ago, I have to agree with them. I would implore you to give consideration to the views of local people in this, and would be grateful if you could advise how your consultation is being conducted, so I can advise constituents how they can comment. Furthermore, and on a personal note, I would urge that any work carried out in this area does not lead to the kind of visual impact that the removal of the Bothell Mill Weir has had on the River Wansbeck on that stretch." So this can only be a good thing for the people who have been campaigning against the demolition of Humford Dam. The fact that this issue has reached as far as our MP, to the extent that he wrote to the Environment Agency and Northumberland Rivers Trust as well, as he mentions in the first paragraph of the letter. It definitely shows the commitment of the people and the passion they have that the weir should stay. This is definitely a good thing that Mr. Lavery has done here, and hopefully this will make the groups involved with the planned demolition reconsider the action. As I discussed in the last episode, there exists a document from the Wild Trout Trust Conservation Group from 2015 that illustrates how they could improve the river as a natural habitat for fish without, as far as I can tell, removing the dam. But hopefully this letter will definitely convince Northumberland Rivers Trust to put their plans on hold. So now let's move on to the main story. Work is due to begin on a vast road redevelopment in Newcastle city centre. The £10 million plans were first revealed in October 2015. According to the Chronicle, quote, "The plans were part of a wider £60 million Re-Newcastle scheme, which included several other projects across the city, including the ongoing work at Killingworth Road in South Gosforth and £1 million improvements to the Kingston Park Road and Fordham Lane Junction." These particular changes in Newcastle will be affecting many roads in the city centre, these £10 million ones, including Barras Bridge, St Mary's Place, Percy Street, Queen Victoria Road, Claremont Road and the Great North Road. Taking a look at the original Re-Newcastle plans from the 23rd of July 2014, they outline in detail the improvements that would be made across the city. The document on page 6 reads, quote, "One of the most critical things we have to provide for is the needs of businesses and retailers in the city centre. Businesses rely on people accessing their shops and services, and by investing in transport improvements, we will support their operations. Changes to technology and the way space is managed will enable their workforce and clients to access shops and services quicker. Intelligent transport systems can be altered remotely and in real time based on issues elsewhere in the transport network, such as accidents, roadworks, or even the availability of spaces in car parks. As such, we have an opportunity to develop innovative transport solutions. This will enable us to manage traffic along corridors and to the city centre." They then go on to talk about the improvements from Barras Bridge through to the bus stations. They say, quote, "This area is a gateway to the city and Newcastle University that also forms part of our proposed cycle network and provides direct access to 2 bus stations and car parks. At the moment, despite there being significantly more pedestrian movements across the road than there are vehicles moving along it, around twice the available space at the current main crossing point is given to vehicles. This currently does not reflect the best use of space to enable the movement of people and does not manage access to bus stations and car parks as well as reduced spaces for vehicles, but intelligent transport systems would." On the Newcastle City Council website, they have a page that summarises the Re-Newcastle improvements. Focusing on the city centre section, it says that the programme would be about, quote, "creating more space for pedestrians in and around the central station, where pedestrian movements far outnumber those of cars. Enhancing spaces for pedestrians and cyclists on Barras Bridge between the Civic Centre and Newcastle University, where there is not enough space for pedestrians. The Great North Cycleway, creating a cycle lane from Blue House Roundabout down the Great North Road, along Barras Bridge, past the Civic Centre and down John Dobson Street into the city centre." Now, I will be including a link to the full Cabinet report that I've been quoting from previously, so that you can see the full extent of the changes that will be made around Newcastle, not just through the city centre. I will also be putting in the description a link to a previous Chronicles story in the process, in which they have a gallery of artists' impressions as to what the roads are expected to look like when they're completed. But interestingly, the public reaction to the changes in Newcastle doesn't appear to be particularly positive. Comments below the story in the Chronicle read things like, "Not more cycle lanes, what a waste of money. I would love our council to do a study on the amount of bikes using the new cycle lane on John Dobson Street." A comment from 2 days ago reads, "It is now harder than ever to get anywhere in Newcastle. All they have done over the past few years is increase congestion, pollution and road rage. And it's not just commuters either that have a problem with these new proposals. According to the Chronicle, quote, Howard Dawson, the peer group managing director, has called for the reintroduction of a right-hand turn from Percy Street into the Eldon Garden Shopping Centre's car park, which was removed back in 2002. The peer group is the group that owns Eldon Garden Shopping Centre, so of course he has an interest in seeing this change happen. He is quoted as saying, "We have been campaigning for over 10 years to get the road layout reinstated, as it has a hugely negative impact on our shopping centre and the businesses within it." The story concludes by saying, original plans indicated St Mary's Place, Queen Victoria Road and Percy Street would all see reduced access for cars. And certainly from the artist's impressions that have been made about this new road layout, you certainly get the impression that that's going to be the case. And this is the main problem that I think people have with the plans. The majority of traffic from Great North Road through the city centre is definitely motor vehicles, cars, taxis, motorbikes, buses mainly. And, you do see cyclists, but not a whole heck of a lot. Simply providing facilities for cyclists won't necessarily make people cycle or see cycling as a viable alternative. And it seems like the council are fiddling with a road system that at the moment seems to work perfectly well. Now let's move on to the final story. The Lynx look set to make a return in the UK. According to the BBC, quote, 5 landowners in Wales have shown interest in hosting the reintroduction of lynx. In 2015, the Lynx UK Trust put out a plea for anyone who would be willing to allow their land to be used. Now, the Lynx UK Trust on their website say that the trust, quote, was formed in 2014 by a group of experienced conservationists and scientists with specialisations in wild felines, genetics, field research, reintroductions and education. And they say about the lynx, quote, their solitary and secretive nature means that they present no threat to humans, and it is exceptionally rare for them to predate on agricultural animals. Their presence will return a vital natural function to our ecology, helping to control numbers of deer and a variety of agricultural pest species, while protecting forestry from deer damage caused by overpopulation. Reintroductions in other European countries have been a remarkable success, with the best managed programs constructing whole new eco-friendly industries such as wildlife tourism around their presence, breathing new economic life into remote rural communities. And they also have a publications section with a lot of documents about many different aspects of the planned reintroduction. Taking a look at the proposal for a trial reintroduction from 2015, they explain exactly how the trial would run, saying, quote, once sites are selected, up to 6 lynx per site would be sourced from healthy populations of lynx on the European mainland, and be transported with the highest standards of animal welfare to specially designed acclimatisation enclosures in the UK. Once this period of acclimatisation has been completed, the lynx would be released into the wild, each wearing a GPS collar for purposes of tracking. After that point, the Trust team of scientists and vets would intensively monitor the lynx and the effects they have on the environment and local communities into which they have been released for a period of 5 years. So it's clear that they've definitely thought about the reintroduction period. As for the sites themselves, the document lists Kielder Forest, Thetford Forest, Kintyre in Scotland, Aberdeenshire and Cumbria as potential release sites, though with the recent news of those landowners in Wales, it looks like they've extended the scope of their options. The biggest reservation I think that most people have is the effect on sheep specifically. The National Sheep Association has an article on their website from the 17th of August this year, in which they say, quote, NSA feels that the debate so far has focused heavily on potential positives of such a release. It feels releasing this predatory species puts at risk all the things that emanate from a successful sheep farming area: the landscape and its associated ecology and wildlife, local working communities, and a vibrant rural economy. The article then goes on to quote Phil Stoker, the NSA's chief executive, as saying, "The UK's ecology is built on huge diversity, which is dependent on human management and farming in the majority of cases. This hierarchy of species interact with each other, and we already have many examples where a lack of intervention and predator control results in the collapse of iconic birds and mammals, such as the red squirrel and the curlew, two species that Northumberland is renowned for. The UK is very different from countries where top-level predators such as big cats can survive, in terms of land use, wildlife, and our population and infrastructure. Lynx are known to prey on ground-nesting birds and small mammals, and we are in danger of risking investment which has gone into making sure that they have a future." Now, the point about the differences between the UK and other countries is definitely something to think about there. There is no guarantee that just because reintroduction has been successful elsewhere, that the same would be true here. As for the hunting preferences of lynx, the Lynx Trust do seem to confirm what Mr. Stoker says in their species description on their website. It reads, quote, "The Eurasian lynx eats a wide range of prey, but tends to focus on roe deer whenever they are available. In their absence, other ungulates, including red deer, are typically favoured, and various other small mammals are also in the diet. Lynx will occasionally hunt game birds and quite rarely sheep." So, returning to the proposal for a trial reintroduction, the Lynx UK Trust has a section about sheep farming specifically. They say, quote, "Lynx are shy forest-dwelling cats, and research done by comparable European projects has shown that in most cases lynx do not predate upon sheep at all, although in some areas low levels of predation can occur. Based on this research, it is expected that each of the 6 lynx could take up to 0.4 sheep each year. Whilst the European experience demonstrates that the risk to sheep farming is negligible, in order to prevent any farmers from suffering economic loss as a result of the trial, and despite the possibility of a net decrease of sheep predation due to the lynx predating on foxes, the Trust will be offering a generous compensation scheme to any farmers who do lose sheep to lynx. Any claims will be easy to verify through the GPS tracking of individual lynx." They do also mention that apparently in Norway the loss of sheep has been higher, but this is due to sheep over there being managed within the forests, which puts them in direct proximity with lynx. But of course sheep here are in wide open grassland, so if the behavioural traits listed are to be believed, there shouldn't be a huge problem with sheep being attacked. This is definitely a very sensitive issue, I think, and it is clear that the Lynx UK Trust want the reintroduction to be as smooth a process as possible rather than simply letting them loose in the UK. The fact that they've taken this long to get to the point where they could begin the process shows just how complicated it is. Of course, the actual effects can only be known once the program itself gets underway, and it will be interesting to see what the results are. And that's all for this episode of The Moment. Join me in a fortnight's time for more from around Northumberland and Newcastle. Until then, I'm Oliver Ralph, and this is The Moment.